Hi everybody, Luke Gallant here from the Yamaha YT624EJ maintenance channel. I'm in the middle of the auger and worm gear box maintenance, and I thought to myself, well, why stop here? Why not just continue disassembling this snowblower until there's nothing left? So I thought what I'd do is an inspection of the auger and drive belts according to the manual, and then remove them and reinstall them. Just for illustration. So I'm going to go through the manual here. I'll show you the few pages. Again, thanks for watching. So just a bit of an orientation here. We've got the auger clutch lever there and the drive clutch lever over there. Both of those two cables come down through here, and the two cables land here. So the front pulley and belt and the front cable are for the auger, and the back is for the drive. Now you can see how the belts are different thicknesses as well. And just to go through some of the terminology here, this plate up here is what is called guide plate 1, and there's measurements for the top clearance of guide plate 1 and the side clearance of guide plate 1. Then there are two springs down here that manage the tension that's on the tension pulleys. Then there's two tension pulleys you can see right down here. So there's one here and then there's one in here. Those are two tension pulleys. And then down below with the auger, we've got guide plate 2. And I'll be working on this one, but it's down below. And again, guide plate 2 will have a bottom clearance measurement and sides. Then the drive will have guide plate 3, which is down there, which I'll be taking off in a little bit. Then on the side, there's the two finger plates. So they're finger plates, I presume, because they look a bit like fingers, and they've got their clearance as well. I'm gonna put all the clearances in the comments section so you can refer to them, but that's generally the setup here. And then at the bottom, to guide plate 3, there's actually two more springs which control the tension on the pulleys there. And the two larger springs that are up here, the thicker ones, they control the cable tension. So this is one of the hardest episodes I've had to film. I'm actually shooting this at the end of it all, just because it's from the bottom, from the top, from the front, and there's lots of different clearances that they specify in the book, a lot of which are maybe overkill to specify, but thanks for watching. So here we have section 3-12, checking the auger V-belt. There's a whole section here which I'm going to follow, but I'm just putting it here for those that like to pause and see what's going on. Now there's a lot of references to other parts of the manual, and I'm not going to scroll through those, but while I do the work, I'll reference. So here's replacing the belts. So let's start this show and see how she goes. Step 1 is to remove the right side cover, and then it says to remove the battery. So here we can remove the ground first. So being the ground, we can touch it there. Then we remove the positive. I don't know if I can blame the wife for under tightening that. No signs of arcing, so we're good to go. Do a little battery inspection here while we're at it. Seem to be in good shape. So I've got 12.06 volts on that battery after letting it sit, and I'll give it a good charge. So we continue with the left cover. Then we're gonna have to remove this this cover here with the 10mm. So from the left side, we've got a bolt down here. We've got a bolt here. Gonna get the bolts off the other side. I would really suggest pointing the chute in the forward direction before you start this. All right, we need to remove this guard here. So this is what they call the guide plate 1. Got a bolt behind here. Gonna remove that. A little bit of belt wear on the underside of guide plate 1. In this position, you could actually rotate everything along, for example, and see exactly the condition of the belt. So you don't need to take the belt off, you can easily turn it. So for example, when you pull the clutch lever in, it tensions the pulley there. Now, there's a spring that's actually down here at the end of this. So again, I've just got it in focus now. I can pull up on the spring with a pick, like this, and just the fact that there's a bit of slack tells me that I've probably got my 1 to 2mm clearance. So I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to measure the spring set length. I've got a piece of painter's tape on the handle. So it says in the book that the set length on that spring should be about 45 millimeters when the clutch is pulled in. I've measured it several times at about 44 millimeters. So what I'll do is I'm going to pull this out about a millimeter to get the spring to come up a bit more. So it would be two 10 millimeter, now 45 millimeters, bang on. So I can undo the tape. So then with the adjustments you want to make sure it's tight enough so it doesn't come loose. The drive belt spring has the exact same measure, which is to measure for 45 millimeters. So that's what we're gonna do now. So I measure the number, it's 38.56 millimeters. So 38 millimeters seems like a lot, but I'm gonna proceed with attempting to make an adjustment anyway. We loosen the top nut, loosen the bottom nut. Okay, I'm at 41.53. Let's keep going. So I estimate we'd have to get down to maybe there. So the adjustment is simply with these two nuts. Okay, so we're at 43 millimeters. We continue our adjustment to get another 2 millimeters. So we pull the tension off the handle here, remove the tape. Now, the fact that I had to go 7 millimeters on this is not ideal, but I'm gonna entertain it here just to see what kind of ill effects get created out of it. It's quite possible now that this spring has a lot of tension built up on it. And we're gonna have to see what that pulley looks like. So we reapply the handle with the tape. Just to show now here, with it applied, we can extend the caliper a fair bit, stick it down into here, put it on the bottom of the spring, push the rod down, then hold it in situ while we gently remove it. Gently out. 43.41 millimeters. To me, we've come in about 5 millimeters, much closer. So I would elect not to do it anymore. So if I release that now, just to have a look at how much tension is in this, it's actually not too bad. So this adjustment must have been kind of loose for me. I thought it'd be a bit tighter. So maybe we can go to actual spec on this one. I'll measure it again here. So we've got about 43 millimeters here. Outside one, we take two 12 mils. 44.8 millimeters. So we're gonna leave that as is. And that's the verifications of the upper springs. Now what's in the book next is to apply both auger clutch and drive clutch. So here I've got feeler gauges and I've stacked almost 3 millimeters together. The instruction here is to put a feeler gauge in here and make sure that you have at most 3 millimeters. So this guy here, the auger clutch is actually quite good. Now I'm seeing that the drive clutch is a little bit, there's a little bit more gap there. So I could actually move that in, decrease the gap there. But that first one is actually quite close already, so I wouldn't bother moving that in. So for example, we can loosen this single bolt down here and move that in. Now we have to look down there because it's not completely straight, it tapers down. So we wanna make sure we don't get too close. So looking down here, I would back this up to get that about 3 millimeters. So to me, that's close enough. So I would tighten that there and then perform torquing on this after. I think that's about 2 to 3 millimeters. So before we forget, we're gonna do a final tighten on these, even though we might end up taking these apart afterwards. Okay. So now that we've checked the side clearances, we've checked the spring lengths when the springs are compressed, each to 45 millimeters, and then the side clearances along this side have to be between 1 and 3 millimeters. So I've gone for the high end on 3 millimeters. The next thing to do would be to take the bottom belly pan off and then check the bottom guide clearances. And once we do that, we'll have checked both belts and we can proceed to changing the belts. Okay, so one of the checks you can do is to put this top guide back on and to measure the clearance around it when you fit it. The acceptable value there is 2 to 3 millimeters. So I've got just about 3 millimeters here on these feeler gauges. You can stick these in up top. So here it doesn't fit the 3 millimeters. And if I go just to say under 2 millimeters, I've got a fit. So I've got a nice fit here that's about 2 millimeters on the top. On the side, it's between 2 and 4 millimeters. I can then take more feeler gauges. I've got about 4 millimeters here. So on the side, that's actually a pretty nice fit. So the point is, do not have this guide touching the belt, and you don't want it so high that it's not protecting it if something happens. So this is the guide plate 1, then you've got the side plate. Now we're gonna go underneath to do the bottom plate. There are clearance measurements there. then we'll proceed to changing the belt. So to get to the belly pan, I've put wood under the front scraper, the white pieces, and then I've put 3 2x4s high under the center of the tracks. I've got a hoist, but I don't want to use it because not everybody has one. So I'm going to try now to remove the belly pan with this arrangement and see how much of a pain it is and see if I can get those clearance measurements with that belly pan in the way that the unit is now, so I don't have to hoist it up. All right, so I've got the unit lifted up and I'm going to take the belly pan bolts off. So there's 4 on the back here. Now it's very awkward working with this up like this, but okay, so the belly pan came off, and I'm gonna now check lower guide. On the side there should be 2 to 4 millimeters, and on the bottom 2 to 3 millimeters. Here I can see the bottom is way over, and I can see the sides. Let's have a measurement here. I've got about 4 millimeters, maybe 3.5 of feeler gauges. So I stick that in there. So that's a nice fit there. So I figure if this came up anymore, we would lose the side clearance. So when we reinstall this, I might try to get it just up a little bit, but I wouldn't try much more. So what we're gonna do now is to follow the instructions for removing the belts and changing the belts, both of them. All right, so we're gonna proceed into trying to remove these belts. The instructions say to remove the top guide, the side finger, the bottom, and the 2 cables. I'm going to try my own way, just by removing the top and the bottom guides. I'm going to leave the side fingers, the 2 side fingers there. I'm going to try to leave this cable in place. Let's see how it goes. So this was only snugged. This is guide plate 1. We then want to take the tape off our handles. So this handle stays on because the other one's still on. So that works. So here we are on the bottom plate with a 12mm socket. Just get in there. Ouch. That did not feel good at all. So here we're going to try removing the auger pulley. The auger pulley feels fairly loose, so it should be easy to remove. So with that guide that's off, should be able to push it down here. I would think fairly easily. Oh, you gotta push this pulley in here to get this guide out. And there we go. So there's the auger pulley. So when I look at this, the pulley belt. Pulley belt looks pretty good. It's a Mitsubishi. And now this other one, there's actually another guide plate in there, which looks like it's gonna be a much bigger pain to remove. Let me have a look at that. Okay, so we're gonna resume the work here. So what I'm gonna do with the snowblower up like this, I'm gonna put the camera angle like this, because I don't want to put the camera on the floor. So the guide, you may not be able to see it, but it's actually up here. You can see the 2 bolts for the guide, and there's 2 springs here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this string, and I'm going to pull the springs out. If you have a spring puller, you might want to use that, but I'm going to use this string. So you'll just pull the spring loose and let it dangle there, and then do the same thing for the other one. There's really not much tension in these springs, so pull that like that. So what I'm going to do here is put some marks on the bolt holes, even though we should realign this with a wrench on that one. There you go. So there's that lower guide pulled off. And again, there is a clearance measurement for this. So we can take that lower guide off, move it off to the side, and get ready to pull the belt. All right, so now we're going to take this drive belt, and with the spring released, we can pull this tensioner back, and it's going to remove the tension. Then we can pull the belt out. Just watch your fingers. So we could pull the belt out like this, kind of let the tensioner go back, and then there you go. So there comes our belt. So another Mitsubishi. We can have a good look at this belt, look for cracking, signs of damage. It actually looks pretty decent. Now this is 6 years in service, and I'm not changing this belt at all. So what we're gonna do now is get ready to put the belt back. So for the record, the 2 belts are not interchangeable. The small one on the inside there is the drive belt that I've just removed, whereas the big one is the auger belt. All right, so we're gonna work to get these belts put back in and tensioned and ready to go. So let's see how badly I fumbled this here. So the tensioner is gonna have to be pulled back, and then get this belt in there. And once it's down there, we might have to raise the snowblower just to put it around that bottom pulley. So once we have it around the top pulley, as such, into the tensioner. There we go. Now I'm going to lift the snowblower All right, guys, again, I'm gonna leave the angle as is. So what you wanna do is get in there and pull the belt onto the pulley, turn the pulley, and the belt easily mounts onto that. So that's perfect. Now we wanna install the lower guide. We'll put that guide in place there just loosely, and we'll get the 2 screws. If I might add, it's very hard to come up with good camera angles. You'll have to just bear with me here. Okay, so now that we've got the lower guide snugged in, I can use the feeler gauges, and you can have at most 4 millimeters. You want to get this feeler gauge up there. I'll be real honest, it's next to impossible to get in there. Really, really difficult. So that's about 4 millimeters. It's a little bit too thick. Try to get in there with 3, still not. Try to get in there with just under 2, and I'm just to say. So what I would do is maybe snug this a bit and move it to the right. There you go. So kind of try centering this from the bottom. Now a flashlight would probably be useful. So there I can see I've got about that 2 to 3 millimeters there as well. And you just want to see what you got on the bottom, which again, you really can't get a feeler gauge in there. So I'm gonna go based on before and just make sure that it's a bit centered. So you want to push the tensioner aside and then get the belt onto this. There you go. There. Now that it's onto that side, we can push it onto the other. And now our belt is on. So now we've got this in here. So we can again put a bit of Loctite on these 12 millimeter bolts. This thread locker does not smell good. So once in place, we can just tighten it a little bit, measure the clearances, and perform torquing. Okay. So again, we've got a general clearance of 2 to 3 millimeters. So this is, I've got about 3 millimeters in here. So then what I can do is put that like that. In fact, what do I have now? This is about 2.5. So I can go up a tiny bit. This would give me 1.3 plus another 1.5, so 2.8 kind of deal. Push this up like this, and then look with a flashlight. So I look up on the sides. Oh, so I'm touching there, and I've got the clearance there. So I kind of want to open that up, so the belt isn't quite tight in there now. And then here, when the belt is tight, we'll have that clearance. And again, I check that I've got it here as well. So I'm good. So I would secure this 12 millimeter, and I've got 16, I got 16 Newton meters on here, which is 142 inch-pounds with a tiny bit of Loctite on there. The torque value for these is actually not in the book. Okay, once secure, have another look. We have our clearance when the belt's good, they're good. And then on the underside, we again go feel, and we're perfect there. So now that that's on, we can probably get our belly pan on from this angle. It's gonna be a lot easier to do that. Okay, so putting on this belly pan. And once in, we fit into the back. Now these bolts already have Loctite on them, so I'm not gonna overdo it. Newton meters. All right, so here we've got the final one, guide plate 1. Our belts are back. I've gone and tested. Things are looking good. While we're here, I've got this foam that seems to have gotten unstuck. So what I'm gonna do is take this tape off, and I'm gonna put some shoe glue down, and we'll see how that lasts. Some of our rubbing alcohol. And then here we've got the foam going back. Let's see how that lasts. It might last about 15 seconds, but foam and shoe glue get along. Shoe glue gets along with almost anything. So I'll make sure there's absorption there. So we're going to proceed now with guide plate 1. So I marked guide plate 1 originally. So what I'll do is I'll, again, put a little bit of Loctite on this, because you really don't want these coming loose. So again, looking for that on average 3 millimeters. So we could do that on the top. So here, I'll put it to where it was before. And down here, it was here. Just gonna Put a little tighten on that. Tighten here. That's about where I've had all this stuff before. So there I've got 3 millimeters won't go in. And if now I'll do this, which is about 2 millimeters. So that that does go in. Then on the sides, actually a little bit tight on there. So I may want to just open that up a little bit, because you don't really want that belt rubbing in there. So when these belts are tight, this is going to clear, which is good. Here I've got clearance on the front belt. Sorry, I'm totally blocking this. It's very, very hard. So now that we've got guide plate 1 in with the 2 levers pulled in, we're going to measure the clearance on the top and the sides. So I'm going to go back with my approximately 3 millimeters and try it from the top. I'm good. I'm good on the sides. Now I'll try to tighten this up a little bit. There we go. So we got that. Then I'll try to go down the sides here. And that's a little bit tight on the side. So I want to give a little bit of space here. There we go. You really don't want that touching. So there, and there. Having a bit of a challenge getting the 3 in there. So if I can maybe put the 2 millimeter, roughly, maybe 2.2. I can live with that. I can see air through there. So then we're going to tighten this up to 89 inch-pounds. All right, and that's guide plate 1 that's reinstalled. So we're going to proceed now with reinstalling the battery. So put the battery in its holder there. We've got a cable here. Kind of get the battery seated. Okay. Now we proceed to putting the panels in. So now that the chute's pointing in another direction, this panel goes on much more easily. 89 inch-pounds once again. Okay, so we're going to go for the first start of the season. I've left the covers off because I want to change the oil still, which I won't do on camera. We'll do first start of the season, and then we'll test both the auger and the drive engagements just to make sure that they work correctly. The tracks aren't engaged right now, so I'm just going to watch the axles turn, and I'll be watching the auger turn as well to make sure it stops when it should. Here we go with the drive now. Okay, I see that the axles are turning. Once I let off the drive, it's good. I can see here. There we see the auger turning, and the auger stops. Now I'll try both together. Alright, so I've got the drive and the auger together. Alright, so time to wrap this job up. I've made sure that I torqued all the bolts. I'd actually forgotten one on the finger for the drive belt, but everything else seems good. We tested the auger, we tested the drive, and both engage, disengage. That's after the belt work. And then for sure the gearbox, I've got oil in it. So seem to be ready for the season. So I'm going to put these covers back on, finish it up, and see you guys another day.